Yo, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I am Mr. Warren Hayes and this is the podcast where we are going to be talking about professional wrestling for a couple of hours right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes. If you were listening to that like on 2 times speed, suddenly you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to change that back down to like 1.25. No, that's fine. We're back to my usual cadence here. Listen, thank you very much for allowing me into your consciousness here for a couple of hours. We do this on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application. And in return, I would appreciate if you wouldn't mind helping the podcast grow by either leaving a like on YouTube or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. Those things are terrific. But as it pertains to the show today, well, we've got a lot of stuff lined up. It's going to be an AEW skewed show. We're going to cover a few AEW topics in regards to, upcoming venues. We're going to talk about Hangman Adam Page. We're going to talk about Ricochet, but we're also going to have a good chunk of this show reserved to review STARDOM's big 15th anniversary Supreme Fight show in Osaka that happened in Osaka just a couple of days ago this past weekend. So we're going to be covering, we're going to be reviewing the whole thing here as well. So we got a nice, big, hefty show full of all sorts of things that I like. And I like reviewing shows, and so I got one lined up here for today. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Thank you very much for being here. We've got some Janel Grant lawsuit news. Reported by Brandon Thurston over there on Post Wrestling. Judge denies discovery in Janel Grant lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE. Allows her to renew the motion later. So let's take a look here. Read the article that Brandon whipped up here. Judge Sarah F. Russell has denied Janel Grant's request for early discovery in her lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE, though she indicated Grant may renew the motion later in the proceedings. In her ruling, Russell found that Grant had not established good cause for obtaining records and depositions before the defendants filed their anticipated motions to compel arbitration. However, the judge left open the possibility of reconsidering the issue once those arbitration motions are submitted. The judge's order said she could not determine yet whether allowing discovery at this point is needed to resolve the arbitration issue. The related portion of the order states as follows. Plaintiff Grant seeks discovery to support several grounds for avoiding arbitration. The court expresses no opinion as to the merits of these forthcoming arguments or any other grounds that plaintiff may choose to assert in opposition to defendant's motion to compel arbitration. But the court has determined that it cannot evaluate from the current record whether discovery from defendants is required to resolve the applicability of defense plaintiff may raise to arbitration. Thus, plaintiff has not met her burden to show good cause for taking discovery before responding to defendants' motions to compel arbitration. Plaintiff may renew her motion for leave to take discovery in conjunction with filing her response in opposition to defendants' motions to compel. After reviewing the briefing, the court will determine whether to permit parties to take limited, reciprocal discovery. The decision filed Friday evening moves the case forward after 7 months of inactivity while awaiting the judge's ruling. The long wait, while notable, is within federal judges' broad discretion over the time they may take to make decisions. The parties did not immediately respond to requests for comments from Pro Wrestling. And of course, Grant is a former WWE paralegal who alleges she was sex trafficked and sexually assaulted by McMahon during her time at the company, allegations that McMahon denies. Grant claims that WWE was negligent in allowing the alleged abuse. The lawsuit was initially filed in January 2024 and led to McMahon's resignation from all roles at WWE and TKO. Okay. So what does all of that mean exactly? What is the what exactly happened here essentially? So essentially from what I understand, and again, like I'm no super duper legal expert, but from what I have been able to from what I understand, and from again talking with people and asking some questions, the plaintiffs, Grant essentially, would want to have access to discovery before filing motions to compel arbitration or not, right? Because if you remember, the length that we're going through here is essentially to determine whether or not this case will be settled in arbitration as per the NDA agreement. NDA agreement, that's redundant, but as per the NDA, versus going to court, which is something that Janel Grant wants to see happen, but is not exactly, but wasn't covered. There we go, by the NDA, because the NDA did say that it was supposed to go to arbitration. But if you recall, they're basically the plaintiffs are basically challenging the validity of the NDAs in this type of situation. So basically, the plaintiff here in this situation was requesting certain records and the opportunity to question people, make depositions and whatnot, before the defendants, which is McMahon, had the opportunity to file motions to send the case to arbitration. They wanted a little more information before going down that route. They needed some discovery, right? So I think it's pretty clear. It was in the headline. The judge basically said that Grant cannot get those records, like they cannot get the discovery, cannot get the records, cannot make depositions yet because she hasn't shown a strong enough reason, right? The good cause, right? So she hasn't shown a good enough reason to justify doing that discovery before the arbitration motions are resolved, if that makes sense. The judge said she might allow some limited discovery and some mutual discovery later, right? So if she gets access to some records and is allowed to get some depositions, well, then the defendants should have that same opportunity as well. But this will happen only after the defendants file their motions to compel arbitration and not before. Whether Grant actually needs the records that she wants to respond to the defendants' arbitrations regarding it, to respond to the defendants' arguments regarding arbitration. That's the thing. Like the Grant's people haven't demonstrated a solid enough case for the judge to say, yeah, okay, I see why you may want this before the arbitration filings are made. So since Grant hasn't proven that she needs the information right now, the request for early discovery is denied. And Grant can try again. The judge said this, right? Grant can try again, but she has to do it when she files her response against the arbitration motions. So it's procedural stuff at this point, right? But it is, but it's nonetheless like it's still interesting and compelling to see how deep into this we are and how on the cusp we are really of something moving forward. If the request, the question that I have, and I wasn't able to get a really satisfying response to this question, but I was wondering if Grant had been able to get early discovery on this, would her discovery be public? So would we have had the opportunity to see, some of the evidence, some of the things that are being thrown in here? Would we be able to see the depositions that were being made and who was being subpoenaed to make a deposition and so on and so forth? And it wasn't very clear. Like nobody, like, at least in the people that I asked, were like, well, it depends. Well, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure. So it's like, all right. Because, I don't know if this would have opened up a door for us to see like stuff that we really needed, that we would have waited for discovery in a trial situation, right? Probably. Because I think the idea with discovery is that everything just like gets thrown on the table and everything is transparent for all parties involved, and that includes the general public. So, it still could happen. It still could happen once we get to the filings for arbitration, which still could take a while. Everyone that thought that this was going to be resolved really, really fast, and look, this is dragging, right? This is going on like this is 2024 at this point, folks. It's been a while. It's been a while, and the accusations sort of they had been around since 2023, right? If you recall, and the lawsuit was filed in 2024, January 2024, and it's been 2 years now. It doesn't feel like we're getting any closer at the very least, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how things keep moving here. But this is the latest development in the case. It's interesting, and I hope I explained it in as plain English as possible, so that we can all continue to follow what's going on here in the Janel Grant case. I don't see how an NDA, if crimes are committed, can be held to any legal standard. That's essentially what I believe. That's what Grant is banking on. That's the thing. That's why they're trying to get the NDAs thrown out. But look, it's very legal and it's very tricky. Just seems to me it's going to be thrown into arbitration, and Grant will end up getting, I think I heard $3 million, the $3 million she never got from Vince. And I think I even said this at the time. There is a 95% chance that this is going to all end up either in arbitration or settled out of court. There's a very, very fair chance that this is going to happen, that this is the way it's going to go, right? It's not going to be a big courtroom drama. It's not going to be any of that. It's all going to be settled outside of the public eye, right? So whatever ends up happening, whatever the results are going to be, we're never going to hear about it. We're never going to see or hear, most of the details, and that'll be that. I mean, there's a teeny tiny percentage of a chance that it might happen, because even if arbitration, let's say the motions to arbitration are rejected and the judge goes, no, this is going to court. Well, it can still be settled outside of court. That's still something that can happen, right? So, that's still what we can expect. I think it would be really interesting for a lot of wrestling fans, and the general public, of course, but in particular wrestling fans. I think it would be very, very interesting if anything went to discovery, and we got to see the majority of the evidence that is presented against Vince, and the records and whatnot, and the stuff that the defendants have on Grant and whatnot, and to see all of that come together and help us paint an even better picture of what's going on, and to see just how deep it goes, and how twisted Vince McMahon really is. It would be some fascinating insights, don't get me wrong. Of course, you want to see justice be served as well. But, look, I don't know if we will get any type of discovery on this. I really don't know. But, if anyone is waiting for a drag out court battle, and where Vince McMahon just airs everything, that's not happening. That's just not going to be a thing. I want to cover this little tidbit here of of information because I know I've had conversations. I have had talks with people in private about it, and like friends and pals and close relations. We've talked about it a bit, and I should have and I think we should at least address it. We really didn't touch on it when Marty Scurll released that photograph on Instagram of him and Hangman Adam Page hanging out of a Cracker Barrel, which is an excellent restaurant choice, by the way. It's I miss Cracker Barrel. But when the photo was released, it caused a bit of a stink, caused a bit of discourse, and it's all sort of died down. And I don't think anyone was really thinking about it again until John Alba had an interview with Hangman Adam Page where he brought it up and Hangman addressed it. So it's like, oh, okay. Well, since the Hangman has decided that this is going to be news, well, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it then, because we'll get to all my opinions in just a second. All right, because strap in, folks. So, despite being considered a face of goodwill, this is the article that John Alba wrote on the takedown on SI in regards to Hangman Adam Page and the Marty Scurll photograph. Despite being considered a face of goodwill by many pro wrestling fans, AEW World Trios champion and former AEW World Champion Hangman Adam Page recently encountered some controversy regarding his association with a former member of the Elite. The villain Marty Scurll was once a close associate with the likes of Page, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and other members of Bullet Club, as all the group would rise in prominence and eventually join forces to form All Elite Wrestling. He would help lead the creative team in Ring of Honor for a period of time, and it appeared that a jump to AEW was inevitable, but that would not ultimately come to pass. In 2020, Scurll was accused of engaging in sexual misconduct with a 16-year-old girl in the UK at a gathering in 2015. Scurll would claim that both parties were intoxicated, and he believed the encounter was consensual at the time. The age of consent where the alleged incident occurred is 16. Regardless, he was investigated by Ring of Honor and eventually released from his deal as head booker. He has largely remained outside of the mainstream pro wrestling scene since. In January, Scurll posted a picture with Page outside of a Cracker Barrel, prompting a swell of negativity towards Page for remaining associated with an individual accused of sexual misconduct. Speaking exclusively with the Takedown on SI on Sunday about a variety of topics, Page discussed the photo and his friendship with Scurll. The entire clip can be seen in this piece, but we will not be watching the entire clip. We will be reading the article. Page noted that he spent nearly half a decade traveling the world with Scurll, and the two grew very close. He said that when the allegations against Scurll emerged, he was in disbelief. The alleged time frame of the encounter, he said, was prior to Page becoming friendly with him. I think when that happened, I was obviously surprised, shocked. It didn't seem like the person I knew, Page said. But I mean, I knew now that it was, and I guess I was kind of like faced with a choice, like what to do with that information. And I reached out to him because he had faced a lot of consequences from the public. He had lost his job from Ring of Honor. He was facing consequences from people online. So I checked to see how he's doing, and I remain in touch with him for you know what? Since then, has been 6 years. The two-time AEW World Champion noted that despite the sustained relationship, he believes what Scurll is accused of is having engaged. Excuse me. Let me read that again. The two-time AEW World Champion noted that despite the sustained relationship, he believes what Scurll is accused of having engaged in was wrong. I guess I kind of will make a couple of things clear about it. I completely recognize that what he did, his actions, are abhorrent, disgraceful. They are. There's no excuse. I completely recognize that, he said. I've always thought that, will always think that about his actions. And I guess as a consequence of his actions, the public has felt strongly about what he did. And for 6 years, I think because of those reactions, he's been unable to be a part of mainstream professional wrestling because of, what the public perception would be. Page said he never intended for the photo of the two to be posted publicly and had been wanting to address some of the backlash he received. I don't want that photo to seem like some kind of endorsement or I have any interest whatsoever in whitewashing what he did or any interest or intention of rehabilitating his public image, he said. None of that is something I've ever been interested in doing, not now, not ever. And I think that the consequences of his actions that he's had mostly from the public, aside from like harassment, I think they've been warranted. So I kind of want to make that clear. The 34-year-old Page has been recognized by wrestling fans over the year for his willingness to engage in social matters. Even in speaking with the Takedown, he made note of what he believes is an abhorrent time in American history, acknowledging that it's hard to go about his daily life as, quote unquote, government forces are kidnapping and murdering people in the street. Yet the photo with Skrull brought criticism from around social media, and he says fans are entitled to feel however they may about the situation. Here's another quote from Hangman. If you hear all that and you listen to all that and you feel like maybe you wouldn't have done the same thing had you been in my shoes, or maybe you still feel uncomfortable being a fan of mine, or even if you've lost like the smallest amount of respect for me because of any of that, I would just want to say that I completely understand that, I can respect it and accept it. The Takedown and SI asked Page why, despite the graphic nature of the allegations and public response to them, he has decided to sustain a friendship with his former stablemate. He admitted that he has revisited how he feels about continued relationships since the photo emerged. Quote again, I guess who I am is when people treat me with kindness, I try to return it. I have never really wanted to get into that. And that's more or less why I have a private relationship with him. Not out of a sense of self-preservation or shame or something like that, but more or less, I just would never want that to be misconstrued as like an endorsement or an effort to rehabilitate someone's public image, something like that. But I guess I've just always thought that he's still a human being and that relationships are complicated, but they're still relationships and he's still a human being. So there's a lot to break down here. Here's where I mostly stand. All right. This is where I mostly stand on this. I think this is a bad look for the Hangman overall, top to bottom. I think there's no two ways to go about it, regardless on how you feel about the whole situation. Objectively speaking, this is not a good look. Marty Scurll is one of the faces of the wrestling Me Too movement. Okay. He's one of the faces of the, he's, Joey Ryan being another one. And then you'll think of Marty Scurll, right? And to have Hangman just like, casually pop up on a picture that he took with Marty outside of what appears to be a very casual encounter that they had at a public restaurant. It's like, oh, wait a second. This is very strange because yes, indeed, the world of mainstream professional wrestling, as Hangman has been putting it, has not been accepting of Marty Scurll. They or forgiving and are not ready to accept Marty Scurll. Whenever you see Marty Scurll show up at an indie show, that show is typically met with derision and gets flamed essentially. But then again, people go, well, this is the lot that Scurll has created for himself, right? People online did not want to believe that Hangman was hanging out with Marty Scurll to the point that people were trying to find ways to say, oh, this photo is AI, right? Immediately, I saw tons of people going, this has got to be AI. This is absolutely AI. It has to be AI because they can't get over the hump that Hangman would do this. And I understand because Hangman is the wrestling embodiment of progressive values, right? He's He's the progressive, forward-thinking, non-regressive, accepting pillar of professional wrestling. Everyone loves the Hangman, right? And while it's not something like it's not something that he's outright performative with, because there's been other guys, right, who've been a little performative with their left-leaning politics. Despite that, he's never been afraid to support causes, right? And to throw his weight behind things that he believes in. He's been very good with that online. It's even seeped into the show on a few occasions, and people gravitated to that. And I understand why. Because, in a business where a lot of successful pro wrestlers are not that progressive, and a business that is always overshadowed with scumbags and scumbaggery, to a degree, you're like, this Hangman guy, this Adam Page guy is fucking refreshing. Former teacher, and he drives an electric car, and he's he's accepting of the LGBTQ community, LGBTQ plus. So there's a lot to like. So I think, to a degree, the fact that this photo came out, I think the fact that this photo comes out does indeed tarnish somewhat that vision that people had him, where he will always do the right thing. He will always err on the side of the good guys, right? We will all remember the lovely Spanish promo that he cut at Grand Slam Arena, Mexico last year, right? Where he basically said, look, basically saying, I grew up on a farm, and there were immigrant workers that came to my farm, and he named them, and he said they taught me Spanish and whatnot, and and I've always been respectful about that. He was very good about that. He did the babyface thing. He's the babyface. He's the protagonist of AEW. So this is the kind of thing that you expect. It's whether he's fully conscious of it or not, this is what he projects. So, as Chad is pointing it out, there's a lot of people who get parasocial about this kind of stuff and create an idealistic version of this man who is flawed like any of us, right? Who will do things, or has probably even done things that probably might disappoint people. Plus, look, I don't want to overgeneralize this, but this is also the truth. He's a pro wrestler. He's involved in pro wrestling. So even if he has never done anything as repugnant as, sleeping with minors, even if he's never done anything like that, he's surrounded in an environment where that kind of shit happens. And quite frankly, it's not just pro wrestling. I don't know if you've read a little something called the Epstein Files. It's not just pro wrestling that this shit exists, right? And I'm not trying to excuse anything. All I'm saying is that if we stay within the focus of pro wrestling without becoming too much at large, because let's contain the criticism to the environments that we are working in right now. Pro wrestling has always been a scummy business. It's always been a scummy business. It's been better, I guess, over the past few years. But there's still things that happen and you're like, oh, well, it's pro wrestling being pro wrestling, right? Now, if he goes out and he says, look, this happened before, I met Marty. Did I expect Marty to be did I know about this? No, we have no reason to not believe him. There's no reason to not believe this. There's also reason to believe that he might have been willfully blind, maybe, because, Marty Scurll had a nickname, and his name was Party Marty, and there's reasons for that, and not that I have necessarily more specific information and things that I can point to and say, oh, well, there was this, and this. It's just like, there are certain people that just end up in these types of situations by their own volition. Good on Page if he stayed away from all of that and had was completely ignorant of that. But maybe he was an upstanding citizen. But Marty had a reputation to begin with. He had a reputation, and it will always be curious to me. It will always be curious to me why all of the elite guys made the jump to go start off AEW, but not Marty. Is it because Marty felt that he had a secure job at Ring of Honor, didn't want to risk it? This all elite thing, maybe he thought was a little risky, or was it something else? I don't know. I'm just saying. I always thought it was curious that Marty Scurll, who was always a part of the elite, who was always in the BTE sketches. You go back to that era, he's there, he's in them, he's in the intro, along with Flip Gordon. They're all there. Still kind of curious. Anyway, I'm going off track a little bit here. So Hangman essentially creates this persona of himself, and this shakes some people up. It shakes some people up, and rightfully so. I think it's fine. I think people go a little too far. And that's often the case, because they do have, I think there is a big case when it comes to Hangman of a lot of parasocial relationships and people putting him on a pedestal that you should not be putting not just a human being on, but a pro wrestler on. You shouldn't do that. And then we end up in these types of situations here, where on one hand, there are people who are decrying what happened and saying poor judgment, Hangman, which I agree. And then there's other people that are brushing it under the, just wanting to brush it all away, saying, it doesn't matter, it's fine. Hangman, it was a lapse in judgment and whatnot. Oh, really? That's interesting. A lapse in judgment, as if Hangman all that well. Blue Sky user number 60,342. How do you know the Hangman? No one of us here knows Adam Page. We don't. So we don't know. I think he was as upfront as he could have been. And I have to applaud him for being very honest with it. Where he flat out said, yeah, no, I kept a relationship with Marty. I kept a relationship with Marty for a while. For 6 years, I think he says, right? Since the incident. Says, I check up on him. I call him. What is the nature of the relationship that he has with him, really? Is it just like checking up on you to make sure you're not contemplating ending it all? Making sure you're okay? Because Hangman says, after all, he's a human being. Maybe Hangman doesn't want to see him do something tragic and desperate. There are people who do that. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm not trying to excuse what he did. What I'm trying to say here is that relationships are complicated because humans are complicated. And that's something I really believe. And I have trouble. I have trouble putting myself in the shoes of Hangman in this situation, where a close friend of his does something like that. I would probably be repulsed if my best friend or someone very close to me, family, did something really, really disgusting like that. Probably. But how far am I going to go? How far am I going to cut this person off? Am I going to abandon? There's so many factors. There's so many things that I can't, that it's just like, it's a weird hypothetical to create regardless. Oh, I would absolutely cut someone off. Oh, that's great. If you handle your real life relationships like a social media relationship where you can follow or unfollow people at will, all the more power to you. That's a level of consciousness that I don't have. The people that I love, that I really, really care about, and I kind of like to think that the people that I love and I really, really care about, that I have enough good judgment, especially when it comes to my friends, because, my kids, I fabricated them. But when it comes to my friends and the people that I've surrounded myself with, that I'm a good enough judge of character to be like, to divest myself of the people that, I'm kind of like, not really, or that I kind of feel are a little off or just don't jive with me, but that the people who are close to me, my true best friends, that they really do embody all of the values, everything that I truly am. So if something happens, my best friend gets into this type of trouble, it's revealed that he did the same thing. He slept with a minor. I don't know what I'd do. I think about it and like it would repulse me. But would I cut him off? I don't know. I'm not going I'm sorry to say, folks, I'm not going to sit around and construct and put brain power into a hypothesis that might not ever happen to me. There are other people around me. There are some folks that I knew or that I know or, acquaintances and whatnot. If anything awful ever happened to them, it would be very easy for me to just cut them off. Just, oh, sure. No, that's it. I'm done with that person. They can go fuck off, right? I'd be instantly done with these people. But the difference here in this circumstance is that Hangman's a public figure. And so is Marty. And Marty is vilified. He is effectively blacklisted from most respectable pro wrestling organizations. Want nothing to do with him. So why would he entertain this type of relationship? Well, we don't know. Why would he allow himself to be taken? Why would he let Marty take a picture of him, both of them together, in public? Well, again, it's hard to say. Maybe Hangman thought that this just wouldn't be published. He kind of hints at it in the interview too. Where he wasn't expecting this photo to go public. He says it. We didn't read the exact quote, but he says it in the interview. He didn't quite expect the photo to go public, and he wondered why. And that, for me, that's a big question mark that I have. Why would Marty do this? Why would he pull that up onto Instagram? He knows. Marty Scurll is fully aware of his standing in the world of professional wrestling because he can't get jobs, because he can't get booked. He's fully aware. He absolutely knows what kind of little stinger this would do to Hangman if he were to post the picture. So why'd he do it? Why would this guy, with whom Hangman says he has entertained a relationship with for the past 6 years, past the event, probably one of seldom people that haven't been completely cut off, that didn't cut Marty completely off, right? Why would Marty turn around and post this picture knowing full well that he is poison? Why would he do that? And I don't accept a response like, oh, well, maybe Marty didn't realize. No, Marty fucking realizes it. Otherwise, he'd be on national television wrestling every week. If not in AEW, in WWE. This is a guy that not even WWE wants to touch. Okay? Jesus fucking Christ, people. He knows. So why did he do it? And Hangman said in the interview, oh, well, since then I've been reconsidering my feelings in regards to this, which again leads me to believe that Hangman was quite angry and did not expect this and was like, what? Probably sent a very angry text to Martin Scurll saying, why the fuck did you post that picture? Now he's like, why did I even consider this guy as a friend on whatever level he was? Why did I entertain a relationship with this guy that the entire world is ostracized? Was I being too naive? Was I being too much of a good guy? I don't know, because we don't know what the relationship is. We don't know what's going on in Hangman's head. But Hangman, I felt in this interview, just let it slip very subtly that he was very angry and he is reconsidering what he thinks about Marty Scurll. Probably just like, wow, you fucking piece of shit. Why would you post that picture? And again, I will not accept the response that says, where Marty says, oh, well, it's just two friends hanging out. No, Marty Scurll might be a lot of things. Stupid, he is not. He's not dumb. And he knows. He knows in what situation he is. And pro wrestlers are just, sometimes you just don't know what's going through their heads. You know, it's like when pictures leaked of Shinsuke Nakamura having trained at Team Vision Dojo, and you've got fucking Chase Rance right there in the picture, you know, of the class, and Shinsuke's there too. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And again, it's also plausible to just be like, Shinsuke has no idea about Chase and Rance and what he's done. And it's just like, I need to go train somewhere. And someone who is friends with Rance says, hey, Team Vision Dojo, they've got a great gym and whatnot. And Shinsuke goes, all right, great. I'll go try it out. And that's all there is to it. You know, what I appreciate in this situation is that Hangman is not trying to butter it up. He's not trying to find excuses. He's not saying, oh, you know, I burnt the bridge, but, you know, we tried to reconcile or whatever. He was upfront about it. There was no point in trying to lie. I think he understood that and was like, well, I did this, and, you know, I've been in contact with him since the event, and just since it all came out, and just hanging out, you know, and I check on him from time to time. And Marty used to be a friend. Look, I'm not going to lie. Marty used to be, and all of this is very transparent and very Hangman-like, right? And you can't take that away. Now, is it weird? Yes, I think it's kind of weird. I think it's kind of weird from an outsider perspective. I have no idea the level of relationship that he has with Marty Scurll. And that's the point that's kind of the point that I was trying to make when I was talking about my own position. If one of my really good friends did something like this, it would be really great if life was extremely binary and black and white, but it's not. There's so much nuance to everything, and humans are really complicated fucking machines. And sometimes we don't think straight. Sometimes we do stupid things. Sometimes we do great things. Sometimes we do bad things. But humanity is just a mess of, you know, of cells constantly dying and regenerating, and a mess of chemicals and hormones just fucking with our brains all the time. That's what we are. What am I doing here exactly? Am I forgiving Hangman? I don't have to forgive him for anything. He's not asking me for my forgiveness. And he shouldn't. I'm just a fan. I'm just a dope. I got nothing. I've got nothing I don't have to say, oh, well, I forgive Hangman. Forgive him for what? He made a choice. I'm here observing it. I think it's weird. I think it's weird that he's hanging out with a guy that has basically burnt every bridge he has in professional wrestling because of things that he's done. But outside of that, you know, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that Hangman brought it back up, that he agreed to talk about it again when it was pretty much over. I think everyone had sort of moved on from it. We were ready to just chalk that up to, well, everyone loves Hangman, so we'll move on. I think that's strange. Of course, he was asked by a journalist, so, you know, he responded. I think he did a good job responding, but it ends up all being very muddled and weird. So no, I don't think Hangman Adam Page should be out there professing that he has that he's had a strong relationship with Marty Scurll post Me Too as a public figure. No, I think that's not good. Do I think this is going to harm him in any way? No. No. I don't think this is going to harm him in any way. No way, shape, or form. So there you go. Propping people up on this imaginary pedestal based on imaginary things is bad, especially for anyone famous. Doubly so for wrestling. Is there just an influx of new fans? I don't know if it's an influx of new fans. I feel like everyone does this regardless of the fandom or whatever you're a fan of. People just do this with actors and musicians, and And you're just like, stop it. Stop creating this impossible. Stop trying to create this impossible standard for these human beings to live up to, right? Now, you can absolutely counter argument with me and say, Warren, I don't think it's an impossible standard to expect humans to not associate with dirtbags. I agree. I completely agree. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation to be like, well, if I'm friends with Marty Scurll, I'm cutting him off, right? When's the last time you heard Cody Rhodes say, yeah, I call Marty Scurll every day? Pretty sure that's not happening anymore. But again, it's just like, but nonetheless, it's like the relationships, again, it's just complicated and messy. And there are probably very, very deep historical reasons for Hangman's decision process throughout all of this. And we only see it through a very detached binary lens. And that's all we can do with it, really. Because we're not privy to all the information, nor should we be. You know, Hangman doesn't have to spill his guts out to try to make us understand this situation. And we don't have to understand the situation if we don't want to. We can outright condemn him and say, this is awful. I understand. I understand everything. I understand every point of view. It might be a little fence sitting on my part, but I understand everything. I myself, my tendency is like, bad move, Hangman. I think you should not have done this. I think you should have, especially when your position as a top guy in pro wrestling started to rise up, you should have just called Marty Scurll and say, look, buddy, we can't be friends anymore. I can't play with you anymore. And you know why. And whose fault is that? It's Marty's. Like, you can absolutely make the argument and say, why would Hangman allow this friendship to continue, which could potentially be career ruinous for him? I'm like, yes, you are right. Why would he? It doesn't make sense. But I also have the emotional intelligence to understand that there are probably good reasons why he did continue. Good for Hangman anyway. Maybe not good for you, but good enough for him. And again, if you're disappointed, that's your prerogative. And I think it's okay to be disappointed in him. I think it's okay to be like, I lost a little respect for him. That's fine. Again, consequences of actions. It's all right. Ricochet has not been hiding his contempt for his time in WWE recently. A couple of instances where he has opened up and let it all spill out. He's got nothing. He's not letting anything hold back. Let's read this article here on the Figure 4 Online Wrestling Observer website. During an appearance on the Mark Hoke show, should I know who Mark Hoke is? Hoke? Is it chat? Help me out. Is this someone? Is this like a sports broadcaster? Is this just like, just a podcast nerd like me? Because I've never heard of Mark Hoke. And if it's a if it's a sports podcaster, well, that explains why I never heard of him. I don't listen to them. Chat's not answering, so no one knows. During an appearance on the Mark Hoke show, Ricochet said his time in WWE felt like, quote, being blipped away into another universe, unquote, and that his call-up to Raw was the worst thing that happened to his wrestling career. Tell us what you really think, Trevor. The Ricochet that I am now is the same Ricochet that I was on the independent scene and in Japan, and doing things that got me popular to where I am today, he said on the show. Ricochet compared this time on the WWE main roster to the Marvel Cinematic Universe storyline, in which half of the Earth's population is erased from existence for 5 years before being brought back. I love how they, anyway. Erase. Take two. Ricochet continued. You've seen the Marvel movies. Thanos snaps and there was a 5-year blip of people who were just gone. That 5 years was like being blipped away into a different universe. It just wasn't what I was doing. It wasn't me. Coming back to the AEW and finding that love. It's like when Tony Stark finally defeated Thanos and all the people came back. That's how I feel. Ricochet finally came back to what he was doing. And I feel like that 5 years was just blipped away. That's a lot of blipping. There's a lot of blips here. There's a lot of fucking blips here. I already know how this is going to sound, and I already know how people are going to take this. But I think that the day we got called up to Raw was the worst thing that happened to Ricochet's wrestling career. Ricochet clarified that he was referring only to the wrestling side of his time in WWE, not personal memories such as meeting his wife. The trajectory I was on. Trajectory. What's a trajection? What is trajection? Trajection. Trajection is a noun referring to the act of throwing, casting, or transmitting something through or across the space. I have never heard that word before. Transmission through space or some other medium. Okay, all right. I don't know if that's exactly what he meant to say, but he's not far off. He's being very lyrical, at the very least. The trajection that I was on compared to the trajection that I got for those 5 years and how it completely changed the public's image of Ricochet and who Ricochet was. Specifically, the wrestling side of it, that 5 years really tarnished Ricochet's wrestling legacy. Folks, he's right. Ricochet was called up to the WWE main roster in early 2019. He was voted most underrated in the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards in 2020 and 2021. Insane. That I can't believe that. And was named Best Flying Wrestler in 2011, 2014, and 2015. He was also named Best Flying Wrestler of the Decade for the 2010s, finishing ahead of Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay. I've got two things on Ricochet. We're going to start with this one and then we'll move on to the next one, right? Everything he says here is objectively true. Everything he says here can be demonstrated with tangible evidence. The 5 year, when he was in NXT, in the black and gold, he was very much Ricochet. And he was doing Ricochet things and people were excited. There were a ton of people who had never seen Ricochet before. And we got to go back to that era. We got to go, I'm assuming that a lot of you watching right now, listening right now, or live in the chat, I'm assuming that a lot of you are fans, longtime wrestling fans. That that you're not really recent fans. At the very least, you will remember Ricochet from the 2010s era, where he was absolutely one of the best professional wrestlers on the planet. And he was coming up along a Kota Ibushi and a Will Ospreay and many others. And Kenny Omega on top of that, right? Just a couple off the top of my head like that. But there was no question. I don't think anyone would argue, cross their arms and say, you are absolutely wrong. At that time, Ricochet was absolutely one of the best professional wrestlers on earth. And when he was picked up to go to NXT, there was a lot of buzz around it because of the reputation that he had created for himself. Because WWE had snatched up an incredible pro wrestler who was still very young and a guy who could do just about anything, who razzle-dazzled everyone no matter where he went, no matter where he wrestled. Just like completely tore the house down every time. And unless you go back and watch those tapes, and even there, I think that even if you go back and watch the tapes, I think it's something you had to be immersed in. You had to be there, where you're in the midst of this buzz and you go, you do the Tim and Eric thing, because that's what it was. That's why people lost their shit with the now infamous Ricochet Will Ospreay match, right? That's why people lost their shit, because these guys were the future. They were going to propulse wrestling forward, and be the stars of tomorrow. And look at where we're at least with Will, right? WWE completely grounded Ricochet because Vince did not like these guys. Didn't like smaller guys, didn't like flippy dudes. He didn't like that kind of guy. So he didn't quite know what to do with them. Plus, he'd try to have Ricochet cut promos where the promos were just complete garbage. Can you imagine? And I'm sure a lot of you have seen Ricochet cut WWE promos, and everyone was unanimous. Don't let the man talk. Keep the microphone away from him. He can't talk. You're just destroying his personality. You're destroying everything. Give him a mouthpiece. He's terrible. Now look at the work he's doing in AEW. Like, he's the mouthpiece for his own group. He's tremendous. And you're seeing I don't know if Ricochet in 2026 is still one of the greatest wrestlers on earth, right? Where I think he's still very much up there. Top 20? Could have a nice little argument, maybe a top 30, maybe. Because he's still very good. He's still very good. I still think he hasn't had the matches yet where he can really stretch his legs and really go crazy. I think he hasn't had those matches yet. Where was I going with this? I lost my train of thought because that was a bit of a sidebar. When he says that his legacy was tarnished by his 5 years being on Raw, he's absolutely right. Because this guy ultimately should be spoken of on with the same level of reverence we talk about Will Ospreay or we talk about Kenny Omega. We should be because that guy was that fucking good. And he was in a company that did not do jack shit with him because they didn't know how to book him because the way he wrestled was too spectacular. You've heard the story, right? Of him going back after a match. And I can't remember if it was Triple H or Vince telling him, yeah, you got to do less flips. It's like, what the fuck? Like, that's my thing. I'm an aerial guy. I fly around the ring. That's my thing. You're telling me to do less flips? They wanted him to stick to the house style. Well, Ricochet could never thrive in the WWE house style. Ever. So when his contract came up and he decided not to re-sign, I, like many other people, were excited to see what he was going to do because the rumor immediately was, of course, he's going to AEW. He's going to go wrestle with his pals. He's going to go wrestle with Will again. Like this, he's going to go wrestle with all the guys that he came up with on the indies and all avoided WWE and continued to build their legacy and their star power outside of the WWE system. And now he's like, okay, I can go join these guys now. And I was like, Ricochet is coming in and he's basically still in tip-top shape. His bump card is completely empty. He hasn't been taking any bumps for the past 5 years. So he's good to go. He's healthy. There's nothing holding this guy back. They gave him an Intercontinental Championship so that he'd stop complaining. But his the IC title was never put on any pay-per-views. Remember that? It was put on a pay-per-view finally so that Gunther could take it off of him. And then Gunther had his long-ass reign with it. Do you remember that? Do you remember when Ricochet won the Intercontinental Championship and everyone was going, oh yeah, that rules finally. Ricochet, good job. And he never defended it. He was never on pay-per-view. He was never on TV with it. You remember that era? Preposterous. Ricochet being a star everywhere he's been and then hitting the Fed in the prime of his career is an all-time heartbreaker. Remember when Seth was like, Ospreay, who? We got a Ricochet? Yes. But the thing is, it's Seth Rollins and, that guy's got a big mouth, right? And he writes a lot of checks, is what I should say. He writes a lot of checks that he will never get to cash. This is the other thing. He talks a big fucking game, but he is never going to step out of the WWE bubble and have to confront all these people that he talks shit about. That being said, he wasn't wrong. It was fucking Ricochet. So if he goes, Ospreay, who we got a Ricochet? He's like, yes, I get it. But WWE never used Ricochet as Ricochet, if that makes sense. So the other thing that we want to talk about here is Ricochet having a day on social media. This was published on once again this article on the Figure 4 Online Wrestling Observer. It was okay. Let's just read it. Ricochet published several social media posts on Wednesday that were critical of his time in WWE. On the day he is set to defend his AEW National Championship against Jack Perry on Dynamite, which was yesterday, on the day after we're recording this on January 4th, Ricochet responded to several fans on social media regarding his statements he recently made about his WWE run, responding to a fan who criticized him for not showing gratitude towards WWE. Yuck. Kiss the ring. Ricochet wrote, quote, "They took my love of pro wrestling away. I'll never forget how I felt walking into work every week, and that platform was only to make others look good at my expense. And I told them I'd rather quit and go back to the indies and make whatever I'd make there than to come back next week." And I'm sure he did. He later added, "And because of that, then they made me IC champion, of course, Intercontinental champion, and didn't grant me my release." Because he did, he revealed here that he asked multiple times for his release and he was denied. And they said, let's give him a title to shut him up, which is a complete Vince thing to do. And they gave him the title and he never defended it, was never on pay-per-view. Responding to a post about him saying WWE tarnished his legacy, Ricochet wrote, Same thing happens to Balor, Shinsuke, Apollo, and many others. WWE kills legacies and love of the sport. It's what they do best. We've heard these types of comments before. This is not new. WWE just sucks the love you have for pro wrestling. I wonder where did I hear that? Not too long ago was a guy, his name is, John Moxley. John Moxley. Interesting. And here he goes, he's saying, it's like, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Apollo Crews. They all feel the same way. They just get the love sucked out of them, right? Which is a shame, especially coming from guys like, Prince Devitt and Shinsuke Nakamura, who were established significant stars. Regarding championships he won during his time in WWE, Ricochet wrote, "These titles mean nothing. My title now is way more important nowadays." That, of course, it's fine. He's a good company guy, right? I mean, that's okay. But I love this one here. I love this response here. Ricochet responded to a fan about the success of guys like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in WWE, writing, "I'd argue El Generico has a better legacy than Sami Zayn. And brother, if I have never read something more truthful from the mouth of a pro wrestler, I don't know what is. Holy shit." And I agree. El Generico has a profound influence on professional wrestling. What has Sami Zayn done? Being the goofy guy in the bloodline? Oh, wow, man. Right up until then, Sami Zayn was a guy that you could write in and off as things, and just without a care in the world. He was a comedy guy. Remember what Sami Zayn was doing before the bloodline stuff? Do you remember? He was doing his documentary angle. Oh, yes. That we never saw and never will. That's what they were doing. But Ricochet is right. I agree with him. What has Sami Zayn done that has been so era-defining, that has been so significant in WWE? He's just going through the motions. He's doing his thing. You know, he had there was one moment that they could have done something really interesting with Sammy and help really establish Sammy as something different, something new in WWE. And that was the Elimination Chamber in Montreal a couple of years ago against Roman Reigns, where everyone was expecting Sammy to win. Everyone was hoping Sammy was going to be the guy to defeat Roman. And it all made sense on top of that in their little storyline, in their little bloodline, one act play that, what am I saying? One act, like, the 1,000 act play. But it all made sense in their little shindig that they had going. It all made sense for Sammy to beat Roman on top of that. So it would have been perfect. They would have tried something new, but no, they didn't have the balls to do it. Because Roman had to have this 1,000-day reign or whatever the fuck that no one even talks about anymore. Have you noticed? No one even mentions this legendary 1,000-day reign because no one gives a fuck. No one gave a fuck back in the day. No, people did give a fuck about it back in the day, WWE fans, but now no one cares. No one cares. We're all moving on to something else. We all knew it was bunk anyway. Doesn't matter. But there we go. Ricochet just like letting it all out. And there's one thing we have to say about this guy. And there's one thing that we absolutely have to say is that all throughout the 5 years he was there, he was not a guy who got onto social media complaining about his spot, or posting pictures of himself, in a straight jacket, all that kind of. He never did any of that shit. He was a good soldier. He said, look, I'm still here. I'm still hanging around doing this. I am going to be a good employee, front facing. I'm going to be positive. I'm not going to air any grievances out onto the internet. And I respect that. What he's doing here is absolutely fine. If he wants to come out and just like let it and have a moment where he just lets everything out, where he can finally get all of this shit off his chest, good for him. And the fact that he did not do it while he was gainfully employed by WWE is something that I respect. Because how many wrestlers, look at all the goofballs who did that, over the years. Look at Andrade, right? Look at all these guys pining for WWE and whatnot. It sucks. It sucks because this guy, as I was pointing out in the chat earlier, this guy was taken by WWE and wasted for 5 years. 5 years of his prime athletic prowess. They did jack shit with him. They did nothing. And I mean, that's an MO in WWE. Lapping up talent, extremely talented people, only to do nothing with them. That's also part of the MO, right? And he also, he went on as well. It's like, well, why do people go to WWE if it's so bad, right? And he responded. He said it himself. It's because for some people, it's their dream. For most people, it's the dream to be in WWE, to be in the big promotion, in the big leagues. It's their dream. That's why people still think they can go and oh, what happened to that guy's not going to happen to me because I'm so different. It's a fucking crying shame when you think about it. And that this guy was miserable. And he was like, please let me go. Please, I am begging you, release me from my contract. I want to go do anything else than be here. You are sucking the love out of everything that I trained to be. Please let me go. You are not happy with what I'm doing. I am not happy with what I'm doing. But of course, we know how that story went. I have no issues with him going out, airing his grievances like that. It continues to confirm stuff that we all implicitly know and understand about WWE. It just continues to feed that. And now he's in AEW, and you can tell that he's enjoying it, that he's having the time of his life. Like I said, I think he still hasn't had the great match yet. He still hasn't had the great opponent yet. He hasn't had that big defining match, and it probably eats at him. I would assume that a guy like Ricochet wants to have the big 5-star barn burner that people will talk about for years. I don't think this is a guy who's content at thinking that his best years are 10 years ago. I don't think he's into that. 10, 12 years ago. I don't think he's into that. I think this is a guy who feels like, look, he talked about his legacy. He talked about WWE tarnishing his legacy. This is absolutely a guy who wants to reset the buzzer and come back stronger, come back swinging. Be like, look, this is what I can do here. This is what I can do. Look at this is the guy that I always could be. I think that it's clearly important to him. He wants to right the wrongs. I mean, he's in the best possible promotion to do it, and he's doing a fantastic job. I think he's taking a lot of people by surprise. The thing that took me the most by surprise is his mic work. That's the thing that took me the most by surprise. Anyway, and of course, he laid the smackdown on perennial dum-dum Jimmy Corderas, which was fantastic. To the point that Jimmy Corderas doesn't have a comeback to him other than, oh, what a potty mouth or something like that. You know, it's like, oh, what mature discourse. Like he's got nothing. So all he can do is, you use the word cuck in your response. What a mature way to converse. That's why I hate this platform. So you're like, owned. Eat shit, Corderas, you dummy, you dum-dum, you absolute dum-dum. I don't think a lot of the underrated dumb guy Jimmy Corderas thing, it's been a fun little meme, but I don't think it's underrated anymore. I don't think he is properly rated now. I think everyone has come around and is like, yeah, you know what? This guy's a fool. He's a dummy. He's a dum-dum. Caping for a company that has refused to employ him for 30 years. Maybe not 30, 20, easily 20, 25 maybe. Yeah. Absolutely. There's spots that have been opened up on the regular dum-dum Lyle. Let's put him closer to the action. Let's put him into view more. We don't have to keep him in the bleachers anymore. Yeah. Have him fill some seats. All right, since we're talking about AEW, since we're on the news, since we're on the discussions of AEW, there's a report going around that AEW is reportedly bringing Double or Nothing to New York City. Andrew Zarian, we're reading this article once again off the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 online website. Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast reported Monday that AEW Double or Nothing 2026 is set to be held in Queens, New York. The location for the event will be the Louis Armstrong Stadium, which is located on the same tennis complex where AEW has held past Grand Slam events at Arthur Ashe Stadium. Yeah, it's the Billie Jean King, right? Isn't that what it's called? The Billie Jean King tennis headquarters or something. But right, anyway. The capacity of the Louis Armstrong Stadium is roughly 14,000 before production configuration is factored in. Our Brian Alvarez, not our, like he's not mine. It's the Observer. Our Brian Alvarez is reporting that he believes the date is Sunday, May 24, which is Memorial Day weekend in the U.S. And then we have, as for those of you with the benefit of video right now, you can see the tweet here from Andrew Zarian saying that it will be that Double or Nothing is scheduled for the Louis Armstrong for the Louis Armstrong Arena Stadium. Fuck. On AEW's pay-per-view calendar, this event would take place after Revolution and Dynasty. Los Angeles is hosting Revolution on March 15, with AEW then heading to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada for Dynasty on April 12. See, here's the thing. When you talk about British Columbia, you never just say British Columbia. You always have to say beautiful British Columbia. That's what you do. So we're heading to Vancouver in beautiful British Columbia. It's always that. It's just saying British Columbia is it seems very hollow, very empty. Double or Nothing holds a special place in AEW history due to its serving as the promotion's inaugural show in 2019. The event has been held in Las Vegas, Jacksonville, and Glendale, Arizona since its inception. The original intention was for Vegas to host the pay-per-view annually, but that's changed over the past couple of years. I wonder why. So there you go. Yes, that's right. Exactly. Vancouver, BBC, fellas and ladies. Whoever's interested. Any which way, right? All right. Get serious, Warren. This is this is pro wrestling. It's all very serious. Listen, this is very, very, very fascinating, interesting news. Look, I don't have much analysis by the way of saying that this is very interesting, very cool. I think this is going to be a very good litmus test to see if AEW is hot or not, because New Yorkers only go to hot tickets, right? That like they'll charge in to places if it's the hot ticket in town. When you're living in a city like New York where there's shit happening and world-class level shit happening every night of the week, essentially in the city, where you have the pick of it, you only really have time, to deal with only the best, only the really hot, high level stuff, So if AEW is in this really good spot, as a lot of us kind of are feeling right now, if the vibe that AEW has does translate to the real world, then they should do really good business here at Louis Armstrong for Double or Nothing. And maybe based on the incredible show that Double or Nothing 2025 was, maybe even based off of of last year's reputation, maybe people this year will be like, yeah, you know what, we have to go because last year's Double or Nothing was so excellent. We have to make sure that we get into this spot as well, right? I think it's going to be a good test. I think it's going to be a really, really, really good test. And if they can put, well, I mean, it's not going to be 14,000 people, right? Because like we said, we don't know how much production is going to take away and so on and so forth. But if the venue sells out, where you're going to have a nice stadium there that's going to have a bunch of really cool shots, it's going to be a great energy. There's a lot of good that can happen here if this fills out, and you're right smack dab in New York City. You're not, all the way on the out. You're in Queens. You're not in New Jersey pretending you're in New York. Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting, bold move. Could be a very good gate for AEW on top of that. And I think it's a good heat test. I really do. I think it's a really good heat test to see how far the people are ready to go. Maybe this will give the indication for Tony moving forward and like, well, maybe we should start booking bigger venues on the week to week. Maybe. Or maybe it will still take Tony Khan some time, even if business for the pay-per-views becomes suddenly really, really good, that maybe he'll be a little wary about the week to week. It took Tony quite a bit of time to stop going to big arenas and, basketball arenas, hockey arenas, where a lot of us were screaming at AEW, stop, you're filling up a quarter of the building. Stop, this is embarrassing. Stop going to these big venues. And then it took a while until AEW decided to start going to the smaller places and the visually compelling spots that we've seen quite a bit on television. It took them, it took a while to do that transition. So it might take a while to do the transition, but then you don't want to take too long, because if your product is hot and you feel you could, start filling out the United Center again, for instance, we're just spitballing here, right? If you feel your product is hot enough to do that, well, you have to act quickly. You can't wait. You can't wait until it cools off again. You know what I mean? Look, if you want your product to be hot enough to hold a huge AEW event in New Orleans next year in April, well, you're gonna have to make sure that it stays hot. Mark my words. You all know what I'm talking about, right? We haven't talked about it in a while, but I'm Tony Khan, and I am 100% taking advantage of the fact that WWE is taking WrestleMania overseas, and I am 100% creating an environment. I'm creating in April I'm creating the North American wrestling, the North American pro wrestling happening of the year. I do my show, and you get a bunch of ancillary promotions all around. You do your WrestleMania week, but around AEW. That's what you do. I really do. Look, may not the same weekend as WrestleMania, but you do it in April. You still do it in April. And again, maybe not around WrestleMania, not the same weekend as WrestleMania, but you absolutely do throw in, and you just go for it. Since we're on the topic of AEW and venues and upcoming events, Alan Cheapshot over on Blue Sky. If you don't know who Alan is, he's a tremendous follow when it comes to pro wrestling, historical pro wrestling. He's got some great photographs, posts all sorts of cool stuff, and he's a very smart guy and a very nice guy on top of that. He let out a little bit of news here. It fell a little bit quite under the radar, because Alan is not a big, he's not a news guy. He doesn't break news. He's like a guy in the community who just likes wrestling and posts about stuff. But he lives over there in the UK, and he's got some contacts, and he's plugged into the wrestling business over there. And he laid this little tidbit out just a couple of days ago on Blue Sky. This is what he said. So the WWE huge show rumors at Principality Stadium in Cardiff in August are indeed true. I've asked and been told they are looking to announce something in the next few weeks. This has gone under the radar by just about everyone. Don't know why, but look, it's not going under the Mr. Warren Hayes radar. And as Alan points out here in his follow-up reply, if you can't put 2 + 2 together, this is to combat AEW running London, Wembley, at the end of August. Correct, chat. This is textbook loser shit. I might backtrack that a little bit. I think I might backtrack that just for a second. Because, look, if I'm WWE, and I did all sorts of counter programming in 2025, and seeing how incredibly successful it was for us, I got to keep doing the counter programming, because it worked out so well for us. We got all sorts of ticket sales on events that we held the same day as AEW shows. We just blew the competition out of the water. Our ratings were through the roof regardless, the pay-per-view views and all that. We were just, we were unstoppable. It was such good planning on our part. I'm WWE, and I'm looking back and I'm like, hell yeah, all of the counter programming has been nothing but a grand success. So let's do it again. Of course, I'm being facetious here. I don't know why they're counter program. I don't know why they're doing this, because none of the other instances where they have done this has been good for them. It's all been disasters. All the way down to evolution. If you remember, right, we had pulled out the view times and the views a couple of days ago. That was of Netflix for all of the WWE PLEs, right? And Evolution 2 hadn't even hit 1 million views on the system. It was like at 900,000. I think it's insane. It's the literal definition of insanity, like the one that we've all heard of, right? Because of Far Cry 3. Was it Far Cry 3 or Far Cry 3, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. What are they even doing? What are they trying to do? Like, every time they have focused on trying to harm AEW's business, it ended up kicking them in the balls, right? And quite frankly, with what we've been hearing recently in regards to in regards to frustration going around regarding Paul Levesque and his inability to focus on plans for the future right into WrestleMania, I think they should focus on their own shit instead of trying to look at what kind of damage we can do anywhere else. Because right now, they're being very adept at kicking themselves in the balls right now. They've been very good at that. And if these rumors are indeed true, here's the thing. Just the fact that Dave Meltzer is reporting that he's heard that there are frustrations going around, you know what it means when shit like this starts to leak to the sheets, folks, right? That means there are people backstage who have an agenda, who want something to change, that have a plan and need to work the public opinion a certain way. They have a plan. There's a scheme going. There are people who are not happy. Hey, who works for WWE, who used to have his own thing back in the 90s and would contact the dirt sheets and work information towards them, even sometimes giving both or a couple of dirt sheets different information just to run each other against them and see what was the best result. I wonder if there's anyone backstage who is that much of a schemer and might be there's discontent. There's also this AEW, WWE, they should be completely unbothered right now that AEW is running Wembley Stadium. That should bother them. That shouldn't even remotely bother them right now, because they clearly have problems at home. Keep your side of the street clean first, Paul, before thinking about trying to throw sticks into the bicycle spokes of the other guys. Now, the question that I have is, okay, what is AEW waiting for then? What is AEW waiting for to get the Wembley tickets out on sale? What are they waiting for? Because if WWE is going to announce in a couple of weeks, I think AEW needs to react as soon as possible. Anyway, so that's a little bit of news here. It is now time to review Stardom's 15th Anniversary Supreme Fight 2026 in Osaka show, which took place on February 7, 2026 at the old Edion Arena in Osaka, Japan. And the number one, right? We're not doing the smaller number 2 building. We're doing the full on. Isn't that the building that used to be called the Bodymaker? Or am I might be misremembering. Maybe something is missing here but I feel like this is the Bodymaker, and then they renamed it the Edion Arena once it got sponsored or whatever. You know, and it's Edion would be the new name, a much less humorous name than the Bodymaker. But I think that's the one. Anyway, big pay-per-view event that took place in front of 2,563 people. And this is the biggest attendance that they have recorded in the old Edion Arena number 1 for in a very, very long time. So, things are still looking good for Stardom as 2026 is still in its infancy ambles on. This is a show that, look, I overall liked. I it's not a perfect show, but if you were to tell me If you were to ask me, well, and I'm sure you are right now because you're watching, Warren, what did you think about it? Did you enjoy the show or not? But overall, I did. Because I think there's enough good stuff on the show here to be like, yeah, you know what? This actually did indeed rock. Whereas, unfortunately, the stuff that didn't work as well really didn't work as well. But, and at the same time, I'm listening, I've been talking, I should say, and listening into to conversations, just getting a sense of how the Stardom fan base feels like, right? And I've been listening into conversations around the Stardom fan base, trying to get a feel for it. I'm not fully as invested as a pure Stardom fan would be. Like I jump in for the big pay-per-views. I follow things from afar. I go watch recommended matches, but I'm not in the day-to-day. I don't watch all the tours, for instance, right? So I'm not as immersed. So sometimes I'm like, okay, well, what's the pulse of the average Stardom fan here, or maybe the deep Stardom fan? Sometimes it's hard to tell. And overall, I think the feeling is a mixed bag. That this show either ranged from mixed bag to it wasn't great. It wasn't very good, but there were a couple of matches that sort of saved the day. And I can see why, and I understand where they're coming from. And I'm going to try and make a case for why maybe some Stardom fans are a little more disappointed in the show than I am. There's a couple of things I think everyone agrees on here. There's a couple of matches that happened on the show, which I think everyone agrees on were tremendous, great to excellent even. But once you get into the nitty gritty, once you get into the details, then maybe things start like, the sheen wears off. How about that thing? The silver begins to tarnish a little bit. And we're going to get into it. Let's just go right ahead. And I think the way we're going to proceed today is by going from main event all the way to the start of the show. So we'll do reverse order, because I think the most interesting thing to talk about the show should be the lead. And the most interesting thing to talk about on the show is the main event, where Saya Kamitani retained the Wonder of Stardom Championship against Starlight Kid in an absolutely phenomenal match. And one that I think this is a match that was boosted because of an unfortunate event that happened during the match where Saya Kamitani is she anti-airs Starlight Kid with a drop kick. Starlight Kid's flying off the top rope, and Saya greets her with a drop kick to the abdomen. But Saya, when she lands, just lets out a shriek and rolls over onto her stomach. And everything sort of freezes. Everything stays suspended in time. And I mean, everything stays suspended in time. She's barely moving. The referee's checking in on her. He's pushing Starlight Kid back. And eventually we get the medical personnel that shows up. We get a ringside doctor. And then eventually we have even someone from the back run in with a little first aid kit. As the camera pans away, the camera is either giving a wide shot. This is what I noticed. It's giving a wide shot of the ring where you really can't see what they're doing with Saya, other than the fact that Saya is flat on her stomach and she doesn't appear to be moving, right? You can't really tell. And the doctor, the doctor is there. You saw him arrive, but you don't really see what he's doing either. And you see the other person come in. Anyway, and then the camera then fades to the Wonder of Stardom Championship. I'm like, oh, okay, there is really something going on here. Like, this is not like, see, because I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, this is heel shenanigans. This is Saya pretending to be hurt, and she's gonna pop back up, and she's gonna schoolboy SLK and get the win, kind of thing, or schoolgirl. I don't know. Does that apply? If it's a female wrestler doing a schoolboy, does it become a schoolgirl, or is it still a schoolboy? It's just like the name of the. Anyway, look, it doesn't. For the purposes of what we're doing here, that's a weird aside that we really don't need to address right now. So she's flat on her stomach, and they're attending to her, and SLK is just walking around the ring. She's trying to get into character, but the referee is clearly telling her, it's like, hey, cut it out. No, I'm not letting you go in here. There's something serious going on. And you can literally hear nothing from the audience. You could hear a pin drop in the old body maker. You could hear a pin drop throughout the arena because time has literally stood still. It has literally stood still. No one knows what's going on. Everyone, and myself as well, I'm sitting there going, fuck me. This is Saya Kamitani. This is the company's breadwinner. She's the top. She's at the top of the promotion right now. She's the one driving the tickets. She's the draw. These people more than likely paid to see this match here. Arguably the two top stars of the company. One is inarguable. The other, we could have a conversation about it. And she and it's just death. It's like no one's saying anything. I could only imagine, the booking committee backstage, watching the monitors, right, and feeling like their chest, collapse inward. We're like, oh no. But the referee, what he does is he picks up the microphone, and from what I understand, from what I understand, he gets on the microphone and then says, "Hey, so Saya Kamitani, basically, she hurt her fingers, and they're gonna put them in a splint, and the match is going to resume." I think that's what he said. Like, I feel like there's two schools of thought here from what I saw. There's people saying, oh, the referee said that that the match is going to continue. And some people said the referee said that the match will probably not proceed, which is typically the case, in Stardom in the past when these types of situations have happened where everything grinds to a halt and the referees go in timeout to stop the clock. Typically in these situations, the match never restarts. So we're all like, oh, fuck, so I don't know. Like, I don't speak the language, so I can't properly attest to what he was saying or not. But the point is that once he got on the mic and sort of made his announcement, Saya Kamitani magically just like springs up to her feet. She's got two fingers in one of these splints. You know what I'm talking about? When you bandage up two fingers together, right? And so, and she wrestles the rest of the match, basically with either two broken fingers, one broken finger, two dislocated fingers. Because I went back and watched when she got injured. And like a fucking Zapruder sicko, I paused frame by frame to see what happened. And at some point, you catch a glimpse of one of Saya's fingers, which was completely like just in an unnatural position. You're like, oh, this is fucking gruesome. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? I'll tell you why I did it, for editorial integrity. So she pops back up, and she goes straight for SLK. And these two women know that the energy in this match has dipped. And already, for most of this show, by the way, the energy of the crowd was very, very minimal at best. It wasn't a hot, exciting crowd that you'd be like, oh man, they're just gobbling up everything. They're on fire. They're just going crazy for everything. I think there's reasons from the card that sort of drained the goodwill out of the audience. Don't get me wrong, but look, overall, this was not a great crowd. And I think I think these two top tier pros, these main eventers, understood, that first of all, going out, that they had to rock the house, like they had to get the people to leave with a good feeling in their tummies about what they just saw, because you always stay. The last impression of a show is always the one that stays the most, right? So I'm sure that they were already in that type of mode where they were like, we gotta go out there and let it all out, so that when they leave, at least people will be happy when they left. And I think they felt that the crowd was completely gone. Like they had completely lost the crowd with the injury. So they understood, like, now what we have to do is go after each other with high level, high energy stuff, like out the gate. So the second act, like, you know, this literal second act to this match was absolutely phenomenal. Now, I realized I didn't talk about the first part of the match leading up to the injury. And yeah, like, it was very good. And, you know, they were clearly taking their time to set things up, right? You know, you've got Saya Kamatani doing, you know, her typical things, throwing people onto the floor, working them over on the floor, throwing into the chairs and whatnot. And by the way, like, here's the thing. This is a spot when it comes to Japanese wrestling, I don't care if I ever fucking see ever again. I am so sick of I'm launching people into the chairs spots. And this could be a me problem because everyone does it in Japan. Everyone does it. You know, they move, they get everyone to move and they launch people into the chairs. I have seen that spot so many fucking times. Now, maybe being there live, it's exciting. You know, if you paid for your ticket to be on the, you know, if you paid to get floor seats and, you know, you're having that action right before you and you got to dodge for your life because, you know, SLK is being darted, thrown at you. You're just like, okay, like that's a good little rush. But as a fan who watches a lot of wrestling, and if I never see wrestlers in Japan throwing each other into the first few rows of an arena, moving forward, asking the crowd to move, it'll be too soon. But then SLK, she fights back. Of course, she does a springboard, Nasai moonsault essentially. And so SLK, she fights back. She does an Nasai moonsault, of course, to the floor. And she starts working on Saya's knee. I guess the story that they wanted to tell in this match was SLK injuring the knee. Something else happened, but nonetheless, the knee would be a through line nonetheless because, you know, SLK has a couple of knee-based submissions, you know, particularly the numero dos that she counts on to move forward. So, you know, they were laying some really, really good foundations. And then the anti-air drop kick happens and then we get the injury. So once that happens, once we're done with it is what I should say. Once Kamatani is back on her feet and going after SLK like a banshee, SLK gets in control. She lands a driver right on the apron, rolls Kamatani back into the ring, hits a tiger driver, and then Kamatani, she tries to mount a bit of a comeback. She has a hope spot for a heel, like whatever you want to call it, and with a roundhouse kick. But SLK positions herself where her neck basically lands in the inside of the knee. And she uses that, and then she uses that momentum that she uses Saya's momentum against her to sort of swing her around onto the floor into a numero dos. And I was like, holy shit, okay, that was actually really sweet. And from this point on, like, this match absolutely fucking slapped. It was extraordinary stuff. They're striking each other. They're hitting big moves on each other. Hell, SLK does an avalanche tiger driver, which absolutely popped me, got me up out of my seat. I was like, oh my God. And thinking to myself, does she fully realize that Kamatani is legitimately injured here, that there's problems here? You know, and she does a German suplex with bridge and the star suplex. Kamatani does a star crusher off the middle rope. So an avalanche star crusher for a near fall. And I found that one a little weird. You know, if I'm going to be a little nitpicky, I'm like, that should have ended the match because it's her finisher. It's her finisher that she's pulling off the top rope. Why is SLK kicking out? Look, whatever it was a shocking kick out that is done that is immediately followed up by a spinning star crusher by Saya to secure the win and retain her title. Look, this was a truly excellent match. Like, this was really, really top tier stuff. And the unfortunate injury that happened to Saya just added more gravity to it, added more drama to it. This was, of course, unexpected, and no one wants. I don't want, at the very least, I can't speak for everyone, but I, at the very least, don't want pro wrestlers to get legitimately injured. I want wrestlers to have long, healthy careers. But nonetheless, there was a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? There was some kind of fortuitousness. How about that? To this injury happening, because it added to the match when it restarted, and it restarted with Samatani just coming out flying, and wailing on SLK. I was like, okay, like this actually rocks. This is great. So Kamatani retains. There really no big surprise here. She is the biggest star in the company. She is one of very few pro wrestlers right now that you can actually point to and say, this person's a draw, and this person is bringing in big time money, selling tickets. So, there's no big surprise to me, right? Of course, there is nonetheless a lot of chatter, a lot of conversation as to who should be the person to knock Kamatani off, right? Now, even though Sayaka Kurara, despite the fact that she came out in the post-match to basically challenge Kamatani again, right? I think Kurara had challenged her back last spring, April, May, something to that effect. May, yeah, I think it's May. She practically a year ago, Kurara had challenged Kamatani for the title. Obviously, we know what the result of that was, and despite the fact that Kurara came out to do it again, and challenge her once more, get a rematch from their encounter last year. After watching this, I don't know who else you could think of than Starlight Kid being the one to take the belt off of Saya. Like, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, but right now, when I look at these two women, and especially how they're positioned in their company, and looking at them in this match here, these are two women with enormous star power that have shadows that loom large in Stardom. You could argue that everyone lives in the shadow of Saya Kamatani these days, but SLK has one of her own that a lot of other women, that a lot of people on the roster live under as well. So I look at that. I look at how big this match felt, at the hype that they created around it, and I cannot help but think that Starlight Kid is the person to do it. SLK will be the wrestler to take the title off of Kamatani. Other than that, who would be the person to do it? And I know there is tons of people. Like, Kurara she's a fan favorite. She's got a big groundwell of support, and I enjoy her enough, but she hasn't found her full form yet, if that makes sense. Like Saya has, like SLK has, like other people on the roster have, like Maika and Suzuki. You can still feel that she's without a full form, fully fleshed identity. So look, I don't know when we're going to do this, when the rematch is going to happen, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, I don't know, I couldn't tell you. But unless there's this incredible pivot, I failed to see how Sayaka Kurara could be the lady to do the job and become the new World of Stardom Championship. I'm sorry, I'm already thinking about the next match. I don't see it quite yet. And this is not necessarily a knock on her. I think she's talented. I think she's very good. She has an incredible crowd connection. Like I said, she's a fan favorite as well. And I'm sure maybe some of you listening right now are like, no, man, I love Saya Carrara. I think she's great. And I'm not disputing that. I think she's a very, very, very good pro wrestler. I'm just saying, as far as having, the full realization of who they are as a pro wrestler, SLK is 100% there. Like, this is I have been a Starlight Kid fan for such a long time. And she's still as excellent as she has always been. What a great match she had here. I don't see who else it could be. I don't know. So do we run? Look, when I was talking about, when I was previewing the card on stream last week, my plan would have been to have this match go the distance, go time, and then run the match again in a couple of months and make it be like a mask versus title match, right? And because then you add even more stakes, even more seriousness to it, right? Like in the match, I was like, maybe they play a little more, in regards to the mask, because let's not forget, Saya Kamatani unmasked SLK a couple of weeks ago in a bit of a shocking moment, and then so that added a lot of fuel to the fire. Now, let's say there were some instances in the match, where you saw Saya sort of tear, at the eye in the mask, trying to rip it off, but she didn't really do any damage to it. The mask was still fine. But I can't help but I was I was sitting there going, oh, are we still doing the mask thing? And it really wasn't a cornerstone of the match. There was no story being told around SLK's mask. So I was like, okay, I guess this is not what we're doing, and we're not doing a rematch with the mask involved. I think that would have been really, really rad. And it's something that you really don't see all that often in Stardom. Really not, because there's not a lot of masked wrestlers to begin with. And even I dare say in the history of Stardom, it hasn't happened very often. To have these types of stakes, and that truly would have been excellent. Because on top of that, look, I know there's a lot of people who want to see what SLK looks like without a mask. On top of that, because So look, outside of that, look, I failed to see who could be, especially looking at this show from top to bottom, right? I may have had another thought earlier in the evening. I said we'll get to that in a little bit, but I failed to see who would be the person to swoop in and take the title away from Saya. Be that person, and it's going to be a big deal when that happens. It has to be someone that the fans will be behind, that they won't reject, because it's going to be a significant moment, and I think there has to be a lot of heat lined up behind it. It's not something you can just throw together and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we're doing the match next week. It's got to be a big time thing. So anyway, we're going a little overboard talking about the future a little bit. Whereas in the present, or in the recent past, Saya Kamatani versus Starlight Kid is an absolute must watch. It's a 4.5 star match for me. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And particularly when you add in the injury, as unfortunate as it is. And look, this is how pro wrestling works sometimes, right? We'll talk about sometimes, matches happening and then there'll be some accidental blood. We'll talk about that and we'll say, oh man, that accidental blood just added so much to the match. And it just made it so much cooler, and it felt more real. And then you're like, I'll give it a 0.5 star extra, or, whatever. I mean, this is the type of situation where it's, where this would have been, in all likelihood, an excellent match regardless. But I think it just was a little better because of the real world stakes that suddenly took hold, and it was tremendous. Now, hopefully, this means that Saya will be able to continue wrestling and will not miss any significant time, because she had taken a little vacation, right? She came back, I think, even a little earlier. She came back earlier than from her vacation than expected. So, hopefully she doesn't go. She doesn't need to take more time off. Anyway, it was excellent stuff. I highly suggest you take a look, plant your peepers on this match. Let's keep moving down the card here. Konami successfully retained the Wonder of Stardom Championship against Ami Sourei. Look, Konami just doesn't do it for me. She just doesn't, it doesn't click. And I can't quite put my finger on it, because she's a very talented pro wrestler, right? She's been doing this for years, and the match that she had with Sourei here was good. It was a good match. Like, there's, technically speaking, in all of its essence, there was nothing wrong with this match, but it just didn't land for me. It didn't, and this is the story with Konami's matches in general. Even with the match that she had at Dream Queendom against Saya Ida, right? Where Saya Ida is a wrestler I have a lot of appreciation for, another wrestler that I really, really like. And I'm like, and it just it's just flat. There's a lack of spark, a lack of energy and life to it. Because I can look at this objectively and look at everything that's going on and like, this is solid. This is very good work. This is great. But Konami never, at least recently, right? She doesn't seem to be able to get me to get me to care about her matches. Now, I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. Is it because, look, this is just how she wrestles? Is it because of her opponents? Is it, it always takes two to tango? Is she just not getting the adversaries that will raise this up higher? And I'm like, I don't know. I do not know what this was about. Like, I don't know what it was, why I looked at this match and I'm sitting there going, this is a competent match. This is more than competent. This is a good match. This is good work. These are two solid pro wrestlers, but they are failing to make me care about this match. This is to me, this is a boring 3.5 star match, and that doesn't even make sense to me as it's coming out of my mouth. But I don't know what else to do. Because the match itself, like I said, absolutely competent and well done, and good. We're getting strikes and we're getting avalanche blue thunder bombs and stuff like that, and I should be, but I can't get invested in a Konami match, and I can't tell you why. This is like the second or third time in a row, but notable matches, her Dream Queendom match, which again, I thought, I think a lot of people liked it much more than I did. And I was like, now I'm kind of convinced I might be the problem here. I might be the problem, but she's just not doing it for me. It's flat. She had another one against Rina, which I don't remember, but I know I watched. She had another one against Rina, and I don't remember. So, I'm just shrugging and going, all right, whatever. It's like, I don't know. Like I said, it's probably the dullest 3.5 star match I've seen in a while. It's just, the work is extremely good. The work is very, very, very good, but they just doesn't do anything for me. I don't know. And again, maybe part of it is the crowd that really was dead at this point. The crowd was not into this either. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's not a terrible match by any stretch of the imagination. No, we can't even consider it a terrible match. Anyway, after the match, Hina jumps in to challenge Konami for a rematch, and so she will be up for the title. And at this point, I like Hina, and I kind of hope that she is the one who beats Konami. I feel like there's a mix that needs to happen there, and this is something that I've seen quite a bit in among Stardom fans. They're reaching a boiling point that they can't stand Hate winning all of the matches all the time now. Like they're at a point where it's like, no, we need some refreshing. We need stuff to be refreshed. We need something different now because Saya won her match. Konami won her match, defended her title, and then BMI 2000. Natsuko Tora and Ruaka, they also retained the Goddess of Stardom championships. We'll talk about that match now, by defeating Hanan and B. Priestley. And I think that there's a lot of folks who are legitimately fed up of the hate stuff and the hate shenanigans and hate always winning. And it kind of sounds really fucking familiar to me. Listening to other Japanese professional wrestling outfits. It seems like every Puro outfit out there now has a faction that has a heel faction that has big numbers in there, and they all wear, a variant of a black t-shirt, and they're all like doing shenanigans and cheat to win stuff, and every promotion has one, right? And I think there's fatigue across the board. I'm glad to hear the Stardom fans are getting fatigued at it. It's not just because, again, because I'm subjected to House of Torture, and then when I pop in to watch some Noah, then I have to deal with Team 2000 and now hate and Stardom. It's maybe there's that fatigue that's settling in across the board. The only question you have to ask yourselves at this point is, what is Stardom going to do about it? Are they actually going to do something about it, or are they going to ride it out a la New Japan? And we're going to have people jumping in and defending and saying, no, this is good because X. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think, and again, this is from a guy who doesn't watch every Stardom show, right? So probably someone who is more invested can come out and challenge and say, Warren, you're wrong, because if you watch everything, you'll have a different opinion. But as a guy who jumps in for a few matches, for recommendations, and for big shows like this one, I don't think hate as a group is as fundamentally match disrupting and destructive might be a hard word, or a detriment. How about that? To a promotion than House of Torture has been, where House of Torture has been doing the same fucking shtick for years. And if you want to count in the years where it was Bullet Club doing the same thing, we've been doing House of Torture / Bullet Club bullshit for the better part of a decade now. And it's got to stop, because it's always the same fucking thing. So I don't think hate is that terminal to the promotion, but don't wait till it is. You don't have to wait until it becomes a serious problem to turn around and do something about it. If your fans are already starting to grumble and they're like, yeah, maybe we should move on from all of this, then fucking move on from all of this. I would assume at least that's what I'd do. I'd find other ways to get some heat. I'm supposed to be surrounded by creative people, correct? Anyway, Tora and Ruaka hold on to their titles. And again, a lot of people were disappointed about this. Then again, I didn't think this was particularly good. I don't think this was a particularly really good match either. I kind of figured, with the principle, Tora and Ruaka are not exactly, top level work rate specialists. That's not what they're there for. So, my expectations are always curbed when it comes to them. But, B. Priestley is what it is. And, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not particularly excited. I wasn't particularly excited about this match. And despite the fact that I feel like I'm a little more forgiving in regards to BMI 2000 than a lot of other people are, because I think they're so different from anything else. Does that make sense? They're just completely different Just offer something that you don't see on the rest of the card. So there, to me, like it's a bit of there's something a little refreshing where it's like, oh, okay, well, these two wrestlers are not going to do, high speed matches or, be doing big dives off the top rope to the floor and all that stuff, because they're not built the same. Then that's not what they're supposed to do. I don't know. B Priestley is what it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. A lot of people are high on Hanan as well. I like Hanan enough, but maybe I don't know. It's all a big stuff of I don't know. I didn't think this was very particularly good. I will give it the old gentleman's 3 here, but yeah, it is what it is. Then we had this gauntlet match with all of the unique rules, where we saw the team of Mi Vida Loca, represented by Suzu Suzuki, Rina Yamashita, Itsuki Aoki, and Akira Kurogane, defeating the Enix's V team of Maika, Zena, Hanako, Waka Tsukiyama, and Rian. And it is what it is. And I like this match. I like this match a lot. And it seems that a lot of people around the Stardom fandom didn't, and I'm like curious, if I pop into the old cage match, it is at the time of recording here, recording here on Sunday, the 8th of February, it stands at a 5.75 out of 10. I'm like, really? I really liked this match. I thought this match was a lot of fun. I'm trying to understand what made it dip so hard in the minds of Stardom fans. Because look, what I think it is the storytelling around this wasn't great. I don't think a lot of people were into the feud between Maika and Suzuki's units. I think that's one thing. I think the idea that the Mi Vida Loca team coming in with one less person and still nonetheless defeating Enix's V sort of shocked and left maybe a little bad taste in people's mouths. Then again, this match served to disband Enix's V at the end. So who gives a fuck? Like ultimately, this was the good result. And I thought there was some really good stuff here. Look, the pacing of the match went like this. Itsuki Aoki started the match off. I believe it was against Waka Tsukiyama, and she dispatches Waka, and then next is Zena who comes in, and Xena. I'm sorry, it's Xena. It's pronounced like Gina, right? I think the commentary were pronouncing it like Gina. Or are we supposed to pronounce it like Xena Warrior Princess type of thing? Look, already, once again, and a ridiculous, unnecessary sidebar, but I'm catching myself to stop calling her Zena because it's not Zena, it's Xena. So Xena and Aoki go ahead, and then Aoki dispatches Xena as well. So I'm like, oh, okay, so we're on a level playing field because right now the story they're telling, right, to me, is that, well, Mi Vida Loca are just better fucking pro wrestlers, right? And so the first two matches were essentially, let's not call them squashes, but they were there for Aoki to just run through, right? Maybe it was a little more squashy with Waka, but Xena put up a fight. It was fine, like nothing to write home about it. It's not anything where you go, oh, there was these great. There's nothing to get excited about. I think the match really picked up when the next person dropped in, which was Hanako, and then from there, I think the match got a lot of juice. So Hanako gets rid of Aoki, which brings in Rina Yamashita, and this one was a lot of fun, and this was really hard hitting, just like the other one was, just with. As it was with Aoki, like I said, from this point on, this match had a lot of juice, and there was a lot of back and forth. It was tremendous stuff. Hanako and Yamashita, they went after each other quite hard, and it ended with Hanako doing a running lariat, throwing Yamashita over the rope, but her own momentum carried her over the top rope as well. So she effectively eliminated herself and Yamashita, because in this gauntlet match, you can eliminate someone via pinfall or submission as usual, typical rules, but also doing, a battle royal style over the top rope elimination. So both of these women get kicked out. And then Maika and Suzuki are next in. And I'm a little surprised because then I'm like, wait a second. That means that the last two people that we have here are Kurogane and Rion, who are, they're like they're the C team players of both of their teams. They're not like, well, maybe, you want to call them the B team. The point is, whether they're the C team or the B team, the point is that they're not the heavy hitters. They're not the big stars. They're not the Maikas, the Suzukis, the Hanakos, the Yamashitas, and so on and so forth. They're the curtain jerkers. They're the pin eaters. They're the, you get the idea. So I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, like the scrubs are left at the end. That's interesting. Maika and Suzuki have a tremendous fight. I was so into it. And I really like both of these wrestlers. They're both like big slugging power hitters. I fucking love it. And I loved this. I thought they had a great fight that went to a time limit draw, because in this gauntlet, every match, once an elimination has occurred, every other match, I guess, within the gauntlet has a 10-minute time limit draw. And I think that's so good. I think that's tremendous, actually. And it's such a rule that I'm like, wow, it should be copied more. We should see this more. So they reached the time limit draw after a drag down knockout thing just between the both of them, and then that leads to the last match of the gauntlet is essentially the two lesser members, and maybe this is part of the reason people got turned off, because the match is not ending with your cream of the crop, with the big names, the big heavy hitters, the stars of either faction. It's finishing off with the scrubs, for lack of a better term. And I think this might contribute to people just going around saying, this might contribute to the people who didn't like it, because quite frankly, it was a very strange way to end the match. If we had ended the match with Maika and Suzuki, I think it would have lifted the spirits a little more. Here, Kurogane beats Rion, and everyone sort of goes, oh, well, all right. It is what it is then. Congratulations. But then again, you look at this and you're like, oh, they just gave Kurogane a lot of shine here. Are they deciding, is this a sign that Akira Kurogane moving forward is someone that's going to be featured a little more? Is she going to go on a run where she's going to start winning matches, where maybe she'll challenge for some low level belts or whatnot, or get some matches against bigger, more established people? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Like, this is where the future is going to lead us. I see this, with my pro wrestling brain, I see this as a message from the company saying, we believe in this girl. You have to keep an eye on her. Like, that's what this means to me. The booking over the next couple of months is going to either prove me right or bury me 6 feet under. And, either way it goes. Like, I'm not necessarily sitting here telling you, oh no, Akira Kurogane, you have to absolutely get behind her. That's not what I'm saying. Regardless, I'm saying, is this a sign from the people at Stardom, from the office, to say, this is the next person that we want you to get into. So we're giving her a big spot here. Now, I think it could have potentially been a bigger spot if she had beaten Maika, but do you really want to do that? Especially since, as I mentioned a little earlier when we were talking about the world title situation, the World of Stardom Championship, I kind of feel Maika might be someone that they're setting up to come around and be a serious contender to beat Saya. And she is also someone who could actually do it. She might be in a position, being, who she is, and a former Wonder of Stardom champion herself, World, not Wonder, Warren, World. It's the World. It's not the Wonder title, it's the World title. Being a World of Stardom champion herself, there's a lot of credibility automatically that comes with this. Now, she's been injured, she came back, and so, that's why she's been a little out of the loop, and they want to get her back into title contention. So maybe if you're setting her up to come in and challenge Saya, well, you're not going to have a lower card wrestler like Kuragane come in and eat a pin on, but it would have been a huge statement on Kuragane, but which could have happened, which could be, unless your plan is for Micah to become the next challenger, the next serious challenger. And so that means you've got to protect your world challenger. I mean, that's just how it goes, right? But then again, after the match, and I don't know exactly what happened, but it looks like, to me anyway, it looked like Micah might be legitimately injured, or she seemed at the very least very, very rattled. There's something that happened in the match, because she went and she cut her promo where she basically disbanded Nexus V, right? Empress Nexus Venus. The group is no more. Everyone's being sent off as go off and do your thing. So there's speculation in regards to what are Micah's next steps. And there's two things to consider here. One, what is she going to do? Is she going to start a new faction? Is she going to join a faction? What is her next step moving forward? That's one thing. But the second thing is she okay? Because they slapped on a neck brace on her after, they were carrying her all the way to the back. And was it selling? Maybe, the question is, there seemed to be some concern as to whether or not she got hurt in this match. Hopefully not. Hopefully she's okay. If she got hurt again, that would fucking suck, because she legitimately just returned. It's like she returned in December, right? Wasn't it December, late November, December, something like that. From injury. She just returned from injury. Now if she goes, she's out again. Man, that fucking sucks. That's just awful. So hopefully it's nothing serious, and they did a really good job at showing that she got really banged up in this match. But there's something in the way they were acting, and just sometimes my gut feeling is sometimes is there might be something more. There might be a little something happening here that won't have positive connotations. Anyway, look, overall, I'd give this match 4 stars. I enjoyed this match tremendously. I thought it was well put together. I think the action was solid, very good. I thought Aoki came across great as being the badass at first, to just dump her first 2 opponents. And then from that point on, once Hanako jumped in, right up until the time limit draw between Micah and Suzuki, everything was great. And the final part, you sort of shrug your shoulders. You go, all right. I kind of feel I would have been ready to go to go higher, as far as ratings go on this one, if the finish wasn't what it was, between the 2 C players or B team players. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not super. I understand why people might have been really turned off about it. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was a lot of fun. Shuri defeated Saki Kashima. Of course, Kashima is. She's retiring. I believe she's retiring in April. So this was one of the matches she wanted to do on her way out and fight Shuri, with whom she has a bit of a history. They've had half a dozen matches since 2020. They've been rivals and so on and so forth. And the gimmick here is that, Kashima doesn't want to, she's afraid, so she's stalling, she's running away and stuff. And Shuri has to be relaxed from absolutely destroying her. And Shuri had a good time. This was a little distraction, a fun little distraction. And you could tell Shuri was having a good time. And it was a 7-minute match, and that's all there is to it. Let's move on. Next, let's talk about the 4-way tag team match that we had, where the Neo Genesis duo of Izumi and Miyu Amasaki defeated Natsupoi and Saori Anu of the Cosmic Angels, Saya Ida and Yuria Hime of Stars, and Hazuki, dressed up as a clown, teamed up with Fukujin Death, right? Dressed up as a clown. She's always fucking dressed up as a clown. Calling herself Billykin Death or something. I don't know. And I was like, what are we doing here? Why is Suzuki doing this? And these are probably like the clown behavior was, I don't know. I'm assuming it was made for Japanese audiences, as it should, because it's a fucking Japanese show. They should. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't particularly care for this match. I thought it was, it sucked because on the preview to this, when I was looking at this on paper, I was like, fuck yeah. There was one team that was question mark, right? Which turned out to be the clowns. Hazuki dressed as a clown and Fukujin Death. So I was looking forward to this match because everyone else, look at the star power on the rest of this in the rest of this match, and I'm like, this fucking rules. I'm excited for this. This should be a lot of fun, and it turns out to just be like fucking nonsense. it's just like nothing of value was gained. Nothing was the value was lost either, except maybe 10 minutes of your time or whatever. How long that was? How long was it? Just over 9 minutes. 9 minutes and 21 seconds that you'll never get back. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. It's very, very, very frustrating. I don't know. I wasn't into it. It's fine. And the clown stuff I could have done without. I'm sure look, if you watch this match and you're tuning into this review, you're probably going, oh, Warren probably hated the clowns. Well, Warren hated the clowns. I don't like Fukujin Death. I don't even know how to pronounce her name properly. I don't like the sad clown, but she wasn't in her sad clown outfit. She was a happy clown, right? She wasn't in hate tonight. I don't know. Is she out of hate? Does she still have the affiliation? Was she kicked out or something? No, she's still in according to this here. So, I don't know. Well, why is Izumi wrestling? I don't understand. Maybe it's something cultural that I'm not picking up, which is possible. Maybe they were, in Osaka at this time of year, that's the festival of buffoons. It's the Feast of Fools or something like that, right? And so it's like a nod to that, It's like, I don't care. I don't like it because now it's like taking away it's distracting me from a pro wrestling match, which should otherwise be really good. Anyway, let's keep moving because we're going long already. Maki Ito defeated Aya Sakura to retain the phony baloney kawaii of kawaii title that she made out of cardboard and glitter tape and whatever the fuck. It's her FTW title essentially. Shout out Taz. Like it's exactly that. The kawaii of kawaii title is basically Taz's FTW title. That's the analysis you tune in for here. Makito, look, what do you want from me? I haven't had a chance to talk about Makito for a long while outside of the horrendous, mind-melting, insulting match that she had at the Mark Hitchcock show against Mickie James, where there are things that happened in that match which are imprinted into my brain and that I unfortunately will not be able to forget because of how fucking insulting it was to me as a watcher and everyone else in that. That was such a terrible fucking match. And this is I'm saying this it was so bad that not even Butterbean versus Minoru Suzuki could make it look better in comparison. That's how fucking bad that match was. Butterbean versus Minoru Suzuki, which was on the same card, just to make sure we're clear. It was on the same card as Mickie James versus Maki Ito, and Maki Ito versus Mickie James didn't manage to look any better despite having an absolutely wretched, quote unquote, pro wrestling match happening later on in the show. Still didn't manage to look any better. That's how much of a blithering fucking mess that match was. So I haven't had a chance to talk about Maki Ito in a while. She's been squirreled away in Tokyo Joshi Pro, doing her thing there, completely out of my eyesight, because I don't watch Tokyo Joshi Pro unless like someone says, hey, Miyu Yamashita just had a kick-ass match with, all right, hey, Shoko had a tremendous match. Let's go, But I haven't watched a Maki Ito match in a very long time, outside of some clips and stuff that just annoy me, and it's distressing to see that Maki Ito, who has basically been doing the same fucking thing, the exact same fucking thing for almost 10 years now. She is doing the exact gimmick that she was doing years ago when she really first broke into North American consciousness, okay? She breaks in, and I myself thought it was a great act, where I'm like, this rules. A petite Japanese pro wrestler who is supposed to be like cute and adorable going on, and has like the foulest fucking mouth you could imagine, right? Just goes around saying the worst possible shit in English, and it is inherently funny, okay? It's inherently funny. I enjoyed it. I could see that her wrestling was limited. She always did the same thing, but I'm like, look, it's fine. She's got the charisma. She's got the vibe. She's got the energy. She's got the gimmick. You could, like I often say, you can really get yourself far in pro wrestling just based on charisma. Multiple examples of that over the years. So I'm like, I don't have a problem with it. Now, the problem that I have with Maki Ito is that not only has she not changed, I think her wrestling's gotten worse. I think she's become worse. The stuff that I have watched, a couple of GCW things that have been recommended to me and whatnot, I'm like, look, all of this is trash. What she's been doing is not good. So you see, I know I'm contradicting myself where I'm like, well, I haven't talked about Maki Ito because I don't really watch her. And then I'm saying, well, I do watch her, but no, I don't like regularly watch her. Again, like some people will share stuff to me or I'll see clips and whatnot. I'm like this, she hasn't evolved. This is the point that I'm trying to make. She hasn't evolved. She hasn't changed. And everyone when she was signed to Stardom was like, well, good for her for getting the money, for getting the biggest exposure in Joshi that she'll ever have, quite frankly, working with Stardom in a boom period for Stardom at the same time. Good for her, right? But then I'm like, what is she going to do that's going to be different? What is going to be the thing that is going to make her stand out here? And no one quite understands. No one quite knows exactly what she's going to do, what she's up to. And everyone's, with bated breath going, oh, well, we'll give her a chance and whatnot. I'm like, it's Maki Ito. What do you expect? What do you expect, Maki Ito? What did we get? We got Maki Ito. We got the singing. It's not even singing, the lip syncing, right? She was even, at some point, she was chanting into the crowd while her voice track was running. I'm like, okay, this is a complete and utter mess. But then again, like, I don't care. I don't care enough to be offended by it or get upset about it. Look, I've sat through Tai Chi for years now, singing into his microphone. And when the camera zooms in close enough on him holding his microphone up to his mouth, like he's not even moving his lips. Like he's given up on that bit of the gimmick a long, long time ago. So, it's like, it's not even that it doesn't even bother me. But the match itself, I'm like, it's Maki Ito. It's Maki Ito again, doing Maki Ito things. And I don't care. She hasn't changed. She hasn't evolved. Look, if you've never seen Maki Ito, if you've only watched Stardom and you've never really paid focus, this is probably all new to you. And you're like, no, this was actually pretty fun. But I don't think she has anything. I wondered what she has to give Stardom in 2026. Or at least in this modern day. She was signed in 2025, and I was wondering, what was she signed in 2025 or at the start of the year? I don't remember. Anyway, whenever she was signed, is the point. Whenever she ended up being signed, I asked myself, and even out loud on stream, what does Maki Ito have to give in this era of pro wrestling, and I don't understand. I don't know what she has to give, and she's essentially doing the same tired shtick. So I don't know. Are they going? Do they think that she has enough name recognition and a big enough star to be a challenger for Saya? I hope the hell not. Saya's going to have a hell of a job trying to get something really good out of her. Look, maybe I'm being too rough as well. I mean, this is her first Stardom match since she signed. Maybe there's maybe she'll find her footing and we'll have the revelation that Maki Ito has been hiding her greatness all along. I highly doubt it. To be perfectly honest, I feel we would have seen it by now. But, I'm always open to being surprised. I'm always open to being shocked. And that's all I really want out of my pro wrestling. I want to be surprised. I want my expectations. I want my expectations to be surpassed. So my expectation here is Maki Ito's not great. And she showed it in this match. And you can only do better moving forward. So best of luck, Maki, I guess. Rina defeated Fuwa-chan. I love this match. I thought this was so much fun. I thought this was really, really good. This is really, really good. Look, you've got Fuwa-chan. This is her second singles match. And she is already wrestling like she's been doing this for years. Like, she has picked up on this wrestling thing really, really quickly. And she looks good. And she understands, and she sells, and she's really, really good. And she does like this is turning into one of her signature moves, right? She does the big flying crossbody to the floor, right? And very, very Mayu-esque. But nonetheless, she's doing that. And Rina, she's just laying it in. Rina's not pulling any punches. She's not like, oh, I gotta be careful for the celebrity here. I've had friends confirm to me, because I straight out asked, because again, like there's people around me who understand the language better than I do and follow this closer than I do. And I was like, and I straight up got the confirmation that Fuwa-chan, despite being a YouTuber, despite being someone who was embroiled in controversy and whatnot, she is committed to this pro wrestling thing. She wants it. She wants to be a pro wrestler. She doesn't want to necessarily be a part-time YouTuber, part-time wrestler. She wants to do, this is what she wants to do. And I have no doubts when you look at this type of match, I have absolutely no doubts that she has what it takes. And this is someone else that I'm assuming that they would like to have Saya fight. And quite frankly, I don't think we're all that far off. I don't think this necessarily headlines one of your biggest pay-per-views of the year, but it absolutely could headline a show. It built correctly, and you'd get a lot of attention on you because of her notoriety in Japan. So, it would generate buzz, and I don't think it's unreasonable to consider Saya and Fuwa-chan having a solid match at the very least. With Saya, if Saya wants to ring general a little bit just to make sure. And I have no reason to believe that this match couldn't be good. I doubt much more the quality of a Saya Maki Ito match than I do a Saya Fuwa-chan match. I think she's very good. I was impressed with her match at Dream Queendom. I'm impressed with this match here. She's quite good at this. Good, solid one-on-one special match, like they called it, and she takes the loss here. Rina beats her. So we're not even doing a thing where Stardom has to push her. She's taking L's. She lost against Hazuki and at Dream Queendom, and now she loses against Rina. So it's not even a thing where it's like we're pushing this I don't want to say mainstream, but this out of the bubble personality, the wrestling bubble, right? Out of this personality that comes from outside the wrestling bubble. We're not even doing that, where she's clearly on a path where she's going to earn her keep. She's going to earn the respect of fans. I think it's a good approach. And eventually, she'll go on winning. She'll start winning. And when she wins her first match, it's going to be significant. They might be actually toying with something very, very good here. They might be on the they might be sitting on something that will pay really big dividends down the road. How far down the road? 6 months, a year? I don't know. 3 months, 7 months? I don't know. But they seem to want to do things with Fuwa-chan the right way. Because I would assume if she just came in and started beating, if she had beat Hazuki right at Dream Queendom, people were probably like, that's kind of weird, right? And then come in and beat Rina, and you're like, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Coming in and just beating the established stars, considering that she herself is a little controversial, maybe would not have been the best play. So they're being very careful with her, and I think there's a reason for that. There's quite likely a reason for them being careful in how they're pushing her. And in the meantime, I'm entertained. In the meantime, she's having very good matches. So good for her. Like this was this match was one of the high spots of this show. And then we had the pre-show matches. Hina Arana Yagami and Tomoaka Inaba defeaed Ane Kanaya, Kikyo Furusawa, and Sayaka Kurara. It's funny here because Kurara was in a losing effort here on this match, yet she showed up later to challenge the world champion. So it's like, okay, sure. And then Momokogo defeated Azusa Inaba, Kiyoka Kotatsu, and Lady C. And then Momokogo defeated Azusa Inaba, Kiyoka Kotatsu, Lady C, and Yuna Mizumori in a 5-way match. And I don't have many thoughts on either of those matches, other than Momokogo seemed to be a little surprised that she got the win and seems to be setting herself up for a high-speed championship shot, because she pinned Yuna Mizumori, who is currently the high-speed champion in Stardom. So we'll see how that goes. So there you have it. That's my review of the big Stardom 15th anniversary Supreme Fight 2026 in Osaka. It was like I said, it's a show. It's a flawed show that I liked. Excellent main event. The gauntlet match I thought was also very good. And Fuwa-chan's match, her second singles match ever as well, I thought was very good. And I think they're all worth your time. Everything else, well, you can dive in, you can check on it, but ultimately I think everything else is skippable on the show, despite being overall pretty much, enjoyable. The good stuff I find really did help carry the stuff that didn't connect as much, and I'm also very cognizant that there are things on the show that I recognize were good, but for some reason didn't connect, didn't get elevated into something that I felt really very passionate about, but yet were fine. It's one of those weird circumstances, one of those weird shows that has a bunch of things going on, and ultimately it's like, yeah, you know what? I liked it. I didn't hate this show. So there you have it. And I hope you didn't hate this review either. And it is time to wrap things up here for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all so very much. If you're still here at the end and you haven't left a like or a review or a rating, well, I beg of you, please go ahead and do it. It would be tremendous. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, per usual, with the AEW Dynamite review. A little later on in the evening, we're going to be doing the Thursday live stream, and then back to the routine next week as well. On the YouTube channel, we stream twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. So if you can ever make it, that would be tremendous. We always have a good time on the stream. But otherwise, look, you're here. You've got the podcast. You've enjoyed it. At least I hope you did. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. And I will see you next time.